It's that time of year again. The New York Jets are eliminated from playoff contention, and as fans, we find ourselves conflicted. Are you rooting for wins or are you rooting for draft picks?
J-E-T-S, Jets, Jets, Jets!
Welcome to Jets Talk. My name's Ryan. I'll be your pilot. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Boys and girls, it feels kind of good. We're getting back into the groove of things. Talk about the NFL draft because our team can't make it into a playoff race and we've been eliminated with 3 weeks left in the season. But we run into this oh so faithful conundrum that we have as fans every year. Do you root for wins at the end of the season to try and boost morale, or do you root for losses and bank on the draft picks? Because the more games you lose, the higher the draft pick you get, the better the player you get for the future, and then you winds up, maybe you see a good player for the next 5 years as opposed to maybe slipping and not getting Trevor Lawrence or anything along those lines. And it's a conundrum that we as Jet fans find ourselves in consistently because we have been knocked out of the playoffs for 13 straight years. It's the longest active drought in major professional sports across the 4 major sports leagues. So it's kind of consistent for us. Now, I sort of fall somewhere in the middle, but this week in particular definitely falls on a highlighted portion of it because the Commanders that are coming into MetLife are slotted in front of the New York Jets and are only beating us by 1 win or 1 loss. We have 1 more win than them, so they have a higher draft pick than us. So if we lose to the Commanders, we get to move up in front of them. So it's something to kind of consider. I want to look at the draft boards, but it's not just like one spot. It's like there's a lot of teams that are all lumped together. So a win or a loss could really shift this thing one way or the other. So let's go over the benefits of winning first and foremost. Then I'll pull up the draft board and we'll kind of take a look at what other teams are doing and where we could get as high in the draft and where we get as low in the draft just on this 1 week alone. And we'll be monitoring this over the course of the next 3 weeks here because that's really all we got to talk about at this particular point in time. So from a winning perspective, you're saying, okay, morale, like this coaching staff's coming back, this head coach is coming back, the OC, the GM, everyone's coming back. Everyone got the pass because Aaron Rodgers died on the first, game of the season. So in a sense, you want to get as many wins as possible because you just need to get positive morale because morale is just swirling down the toilet at this particular point in time. Yes, we got the 1 30-minute stretch from Zach Wilson against the Texans, but getting thumped by the Dolphins the ensuing week kind of sucked all the joy out of that particular event in time. Now, for me, I like tanking for the purpose of like trying to get a quarterback or if you're fully eliminated from playoff contention. And it's not something that like players are going to actively do because there's jobs on the line. Now, there's certain things GMs and coaches could do to influence the outcome. Like the Jets clearly actively put together the worst roster possible, trying to tank for Trevor when that draft was coming along, and we didn't do it effectively, obviously landing Zach. But this year, we have far too much talent on this roster. It just feels like everyone's kind of collapsing, and maybe you need to boost that morale heading into next year. I still think the GM needs to make the right selection. Look, the Jets had almost the best pick possible with the number 2 pick. We've had the number 3 pick. We've had all these different picks. And no matter how high the draft pick is, you still got to pick the right damn player. There was a case a few years ago where the Giants won the final game of the season. They wound up bumping themselves out of position to get the generational pass rusher, Chase Young, and instead won a game that allowed the Commanders to get the generational pass rusher. Well, just a few years later, Young's no longer on the Commanders, and the Giants, with their draft pick that was later than the Commanders, selected their franchise left tackle in Andrew Thomas. So, like, you got to pick the right player regardless. It's not going to matter where your draft pick is if you're picking busts year over year. But this game has a lot on the line because of where the teams are positioned right now. So let's pull up the draft board. And this, as you can see, this is the top 13. The Jets are slotted at the number 7 pick, but I want you to keep a look at the column all the way on the far side. SOS, that's strength of schedule. The higher that number is, the lower you will be on this list based on teams with the same record. And what that is saying is that your strength of schedule is stronger. So with the same record, you have lost to better opponents, meaning you're a better team than a team with a weaker strength of schedule. So if you see the Jets and Giants right now are tied with a .508 strength of schedule. Now, it's a little misleading because technically the Jets do have the 7th pick right now, but because the Giants have not played enough division games, they technically have less losses than the Jets, and they have to play the Eagles twice in the final 3 weeks. So that's going to shift. As long as the Jets and Giants stay at the same record, the Jets should be picking in front of the Giants. So for argument's sake, we're going to say the Jets are sitting at about pick 6 right now, and you're looking at Washington sitting at pick number 4, and their strength of schedule is weaker, or I guess stronger than the New York Jets. So if we match up, we actually jump in front of them from a strength of schedule perspective. Now, it does depend what Chicago does, because Chicago will likely slide up to 4 or go from 5 to 4 if they wind up losing. But what's interesting is the Bears are playing the Cardinals this week. So that impacts things. We want the Cardinals to lose because we're not going to really have a shot unless Arizona wins 2 games. And that's going to be asking a lot considering they only have 3 games won at this point in the season. So we want Arizona to lose because we don't think we're going to have an opportunity to leapfrog them. Chicago winds up winning. They fall all the way back down to below the 5-9. The 5-9 teams, they'd be picking around the 10th pick. Now, it obviously depends what those 5-9 teams are playing. Like if the Chargers are playing Tennessee, one team will stay in front of the other, whatever. But that's a major game. But for the Jets, if we wind up losing this game and the Bears wind up winning, now all of a sudden, the Jets find themselves sitting in the 4 pick, in the driver's seat of what you want to do from an offensive line perspective. There's speculation that, the 2 quarterbacks, most likely Caleb Williams and Drake May, and then Marvin Harrison Jr., are probably the top 3 players in terms of where you think they'll be selected at the top of this draft. Now, when you're looking at the players that are at the, just after that, you're looking at Joe Alt, offensive tackle, Notre Dame. You're looking at Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle, Penn State. And that's kind of where the Jets would like to be. And the higher you get, maybe you could even trade out if you're looking at that as a potential option. The higher pick you get, the more value you get in a trade down. So maybe the Jets are able to swing a trade where they get a 2nd round pick, or they get a player, like maybe they swap with the Raiders, who may want to move off of Devontae Adams, and we don't have to give up a pick necessarily. We just trade picks and we get Devontae in the trade down. That might be a little bit more savory for some Jet fans than giving up a draft pick. But if the Jets win, because of our strength of schedule, we would wind up falling all the way down potentially to the 12th pick. That, like outside the top 10. Like for a season with a team that's like had to go through as much heartbreak as we've gone through, I'm going to be pretty jaded if we wind up winning against Washington. And it's not so much just because we'd be winning against Washington. It's more so because we'd be winning without either Aaron Rodgers or Zach Wilson being in the driver's seat. If you have Aaron Rodgers, at least you're hoping, okay, we're going to see something from Aaron Rodgers that'll get us hyped up for next season. If Zach Wilson is the quarterback, you're getting hyped up with, okay, he's either going to continue to prove himself or unprove himself, depending on how you fall in that whole debate, or he's going to prove himself enough that you can trade him in the offseason, if that's kind of where you land on that side of the story. But with Trevor Siemian starting, dude, there's nothing positive I'm going to gain from watching Trevor Siemian wind up winning us a clunker in like a 6-3 matchup. If the Jets win against the Commanders because we kick a field goal, or like we win because Randall Cobb catches a touchdown from Trevor Siemian, I want to win with players that are going to be here beyond this year. If we win because of Breece Hall, because of Garrett Wilson, because of Quinnen going off and getting a strip sack, like I'm game for that. Like that's okay. I don't mind that so much. But from a draft pick perspective, as a fan, look, I'm rooting for the loss at this point. I very much do not want to win against the Commanders this week because of the draft position. And I want the best opportunity to get the best possible player because that's all I got to hope for. I just want give me the offensive lineman, protect this offensive line, or heck, maybe something squirrely happens and you wind up sneaking into the top 3, or you get someone that wants to trade up for a quarterback and now you get the haul that you want with all the draft picks. I want the excitement that was robbed from me for the course of this season. We've had to endure such a terrible season as Jet fans, having all the hope in the world just before kickoff of week 1 to where we currently sit right now. Give me something hopeful to wish for in the offseason. I'm rooting for the loss. I'm going to leave a poll question in the description of this video. So if you guys want to vote on it, I'm curious to see where you guys stand on this. Are you team tank or are you team win? Where are the benefits one way or the other? Is it a failed Are you a failed fan if you're rooting for losses at this point? Or are you, not a fan because you're rooting for wins because you don't understand the draft implications of things? I don't know. It's a hot button topic every time of year. And I have to make this video like literally every year because that's all we're talking about. There's nothing to really go off of from a playoff perspective. So I guess let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.
Jets, Jets, Jets.